You don't remember the exact day you became broke. Nobody does. There isn't some dramatic moment where a giant red warning light starts flashing above your head. Smaller than that. A declined card at a gas station. Moving money between accounts just to cover dinner. Checking your banking app before buying groceries. Telling yourself you'll start saving next month. Then next month becomes next year. And one day you realize you're not actually living. You're managing emergencies. You wake up every morning already behind. Not behind on work. Behind on life. Every paycheck has a job before it even arrives. Rent. Utilities. Insurance. The credit card balance you promised yourself you'd pay off 3 months ago. The money comes in. The money goes out. And somehow, no matter how hard you work, the finish line never gets closer. If that feels familiar, you're not alone. Millions of Americans are living exactly this way. Working, earning, trying, yet never escaping the feeling that one unexpected expense could blow everything up. A transmission failure, a medical bill, a layoff, a broken air conditioner in July. The details change. The feeling doesn't. Because when your savings account is nearly empty, every problem feels like a catastrophe. Every decision feels permanent. Every mistake feels expensive. And that's why saving your first $10,000 changes everything. Not because $10,000 makes you rich. It doesn't. Not even close. In most cities, $10,000 wouldn't cover 6 months of expenses. Some people spend that much on a vacation. Others spend it upgrading a kitchen. But those people are missing the point. The importance of $10,000 has nothing to do with the money itself. It has everything to do with what happens inside your mind once it's there. Because for the first time in your adult life, you stop feeling fragile. And that's where everything begins. Most people think money changes your lifestyle. The truth is money changes your options. And options change your entire future. Think about your current life for a second. How many decisions are you making because you genuinely want to make them? And how many are being made because you don't have another choice? The job you tolerate, the city you stay in, the apartment you settled for, the car you keep driving, the opportunities you pass up, the conversations you avoid, the risks you never take. People call these choices. But are they really? Because if saying no isn't an option, then saying yes isn't a choice. It's survival. And survival has a way of shrinking your world. The less money you have, the smaller your life becomes. You stop thinking in years. You start thinking in Fridays. You stop asking what you want. You start asking what you can afford. You stop building. You start protecting. That's what financial stress actually does. It steals your ability to think long-term. Every ounce of energy gets consumed by the next bill, the next payment, the next crisis. And eventually you begin believing that's normal. That adulthood is supposed to feel like this. Constant pressure, constant anxiety, constant calculations. But it isn't. You've just never experienced the alternative. That's why the first $10,000 feels so different. Not because your life changes overnight. Because your relationship with uncertainty changes. Imagine your car breaks down tomorrow. Before $10,000, the problem isn't the repair. The problem is the panic. You immediately start calculating. How much is in checking? How much room is left on the credit card? Can I delay another bill? Can I borrow money? Can I survive this? Notice something. You're not solving the problem. You're trying to survive the problem. Those are completely different things. Now imagine the same repair with $10,000 in savings. The repair still sucks. You still don't want to spend the money. But something important disappears. Fear. You know you'll be okay. The repair becomes an inconvenience instead of a disaster. And that's the first superpower money gives you. The ability to absorb shocks. Most people underestimate how valuable that is. Because life isn't hard due to the big disasters. Life is hard because of the endless small ones. The tire, the dentist bill, the flight home for a family emergency, the broken laptop, the water heater, the unexpected deductible. One by one, these things drain people financially and emotionally. But when you have a cash cushion, they stop controlling you. The problem still exists. The suffering doesn't. And once you experience that feeling, you never want to go back. Something else happens around $10,000. Your confidence starts becoming real. Not motivational speaker confidence. Not fake confidence. Evidence-based confidence. The kind built from proof. Because for years you've been telling yourself you'll save money someday. Someday you'll get ahead. Someday you'll be responsible. Someday you'll have breathing room. Then one day you open your account. And there it is. 5 figures. $10,000. Money that belongs to you. Money you didn't spend. Money you protected. Money you built. For the first time, you have undeniable evidence that you can do something most people never manage to do. Delay gratification. That sounds simple. It isn't. In a world designed to make you spend every dollar immediately, saving $10,000 is proof that you're capable of thinking beyond today. And that realization changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone trying to get ahead. You start seeing yourself as someone who is getting ahead. That difference sounds tiny. It's enormous. Because behavior follows identity. Once you believe you're a saver, saving becomes easier. Once you believe you're building wealth, wealth building becomes natural. The hardest part isn't making money. The hardest part is becoming the kind of person who keeps it. And $10,000 is often the first real evidence that transformation has already happened. Here's what nobody tells you. The first $10,000 is harder than the second. And the second is harder than the third. Not because saving gets more difficult. Because each milestone creates momentum. The first 10,000 teaches you that progress is possible. The next 10,000 teaches you that progress is repeatable. And repeatable progress eventually becomes wealth. The people who build serious financial freedom rarely experience a dramatic breakthrough. They experience hundreds of boring months. Months where they save a little, invest a little, wait a little, then wake up years later shocked by the result. Because wealth isn't built in giant leaps. It's built through consistency. And $10,000 is often the first point where consistency becomes visible. For years, you've been planting seeds. Now something finally breaks through the soil. And once you've seen that happen, you stop doubting the process. You stop wondering if it's working. You know it's working. Because you're holding the proof in your own account. And that changes everything. There is another change that happens after $10,000. It's subtle. You won't notice it at first. But the people around you will. You become harder to pressure. Before you built savings, every decision carried an invisible deadline. You needed the paycheck. You needed the approval. You needed things to work out exactly as planned. Because if they didn't, there was no cushion underneath you. That dependence shapes behavior. It makes you tolerate things longer than you should. A boss who disrespects you. A client who pays late. A friend who constantly takes advantage of your generosity. You convince yourself you're being patient. Sometimes you're just trapped. But when you have money in the bank, something changes. You stop negotiating from fear. And fear is what weakens most negotiations in the first place. Imagine your employer offers a raise that's lower than expected. Before savings, you smile and accept. Not because you're happy, because you need the income. The risk of pushing back feels bigger than the reward. After savings, the conversation changes. Not because you suddenly become aggressive, because you can afford patience. You can ask questions. You can negotiate. You can wait. And the ability to wait is one of the most powerful financial advantages a person can have. The person who can walk away almost always has leverage. The person who desperately needs a yes rarely does. That's true in business. It's true in careers. It's true in life. Money doesn't buy confidence. Money buys options. Options create confidence. And confidence changes outcomes. That's why people with emergency funds often end up earning more over time. Not because they're smarter, because they aren't forced into bad decisions. They're able to wait for better ones. Think about how many opportunities disappear because people need immediate certainty. The better job requires a longer hiring process. The business idea takes months before producing income. The investment requires patience. The certification takes a year to complete. The move to a better city requires temporary discomfort. All of these opportunities demand the same thing: time. And time is something people living paycheck to paycheck rarely have. Every decision must produce an immediate result. Every action must solve today's problem. But wealth is usually created by solving problems years in advance. That's difficult when you're fighting fires every week. The first $10,000 gives you breathing room. And breathing room gives you time. Time lets you think. Thinking leads to better decisions. Better decisions compound. And compounding is where life starts changing. Most people understand compound interest. Far fewer understand compound decisions. A better job leads to a larger income. A larger income leads to larger investments. Larger investments create larger returns. Those returns create more options. More options create better decisions. And the cycle continues. The opposite happens too. Bad financial situations create bad decisions. Bad decisions create worse situations. And the cycle repeats. The first $10,000 is often where that negative cycle finally breaks. For the first time, your future stops feeling like something that's happening to you. Starts feeling like something you're building. And that's an entirely different way to live. Something else begins to happen. You stop obsessing over money. Ironically, this is when you start becoming better with it. People who have very little money often think about money constantly. Not because they're greedy, because they're worried. Every purchase requires analysis. Every bill creates stress. Every unexpected expense becomes a crisis meeting with yourself. Money occupies space in your mind all day long. But once you build a meaningful cushion, that mental noise starts fading. You don't check your balance 10 times a day. You don't panic every time your phone buzzes with a banking notification. You don't feel a surge of anxiety every time the mailbox contains a bill. The money hasn't solved all your problems. It has simply stopped being the biggest one. That creates an incredible amount of mental freedom. And mental freedom is often more valuable than the money itself. Because when your brain isn't consumed by survival, it can focus on growth, learning, relationships, health, goals, creativity, the parts of life that actually move you forward. For years, you've probably believed more money would make you happier. That's not exactly true. What makes people happier is often fewer financial emergencies, less uncertainty, less fear, more control, more peace. And the first $10,000 delivers all of those things in a way most people don't expect. Here's another truth that rarely gets discussed. When you save $10,000, you begin seeing how the system actually works. For years, you've watched money leave your account. Now you watch it stay. Then you watch it grow. Maybe it's sitting in a high-yield savings account. Maybe part of it is invested. Maybe it's earning interest while you sleep. The amount isn't life-changing. The lesson is, for the first time, you experience money working for you instead of demanding work from you. It's a small shift, but it completely changes your perspective. You realize wealthy people aren't playing a different game because they're smarter. They're playing a different game because they have assets. Assets create options. Assets create income. Assets create leverage. And every large fortune begins with a surprisingly small foundation. Nobody wakes up with $1 million. They build systems. The first $10,000 is often the first brick in that system. Not because of what it earns, because of what it teaches. Teaches patience, discipline, delayed gratification, consistency, the exact skills required to build far larger amounts later. This is why so many financially successful people remember their first $10,000 more clearly than their first $100,000. The first $100,000 proves you're wealthy. The first $10,000 proves you're capable. And capability comes first. Always. Now let's talk about the biggest change of all. Identity. For most of your life, you've probably carried a story about money. Maybe it sounded like this: I'm just not good with money. I'll never get ahead. I wasn't taught this stuff. I make enough to survive, not enough to build. Stories like these become dangerous because they feel true. You repeat them enough times and they become part of who you are. Then one day you save $10,000. And suddenly the story breaks. Not because someone motivated you, not because a book changed your life, because reality changed. The evidence sitting in your account is stronger than the story in your head. And once reality wins that argument, your future changes. Because you stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start asking, "How far can I take this?" That's the question that builds wealth. That's the question that changes families. That's the question that creates opportunities your future children may never fully understand. Most people think wealth starts when you become rich. It doesn't. Wealth starts the moment you stop believing you're destined to stay broke. And for millions of people, that moment arrives at exactly the same place. $10,000. Not because the number is magical, because it represents proof. Proof that you can earn. Proof that you can save. Proof that you can build. Proof that your future does not have to look like your past. And once you have proof, doubt loses its power. So maybe that's what really changes after you save your first $10,000. The account grows. The stress shrinks. The options expand. The future becomes clearer. But underneath all of that, something even bigger happens. You finally trust yourself. And when a person learns to trust themselves financially, everything else starts moving in the right direction. One decision, 1 month, 1 year at a time. You wake up. The alarm goes off. The sun is coming through the window. You pick up your phone. You open your banking app. The number is still there. No emergency. No panic. No midnight calculations. No fear. Just quiet progress. You put the phone down. You make your coffee. You start your day. And for the first time in a very long time, the future doesn't feel like something you're trying to survive. It feels like something you're building. That's why everything changes after $10,000.